Hi, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you today how to do a leather wrap bracelet. We have another version of the leather wrap bracelet that's using waxed linen cording and some leather. What I'm going to show you is using cotton cording and actually using beading thread. So this is 0.008 WildFire beading thread. And the reason that I'm using that is because I have pearls. Pearls have tiny holes, and if I want to put the pearls on, they don't actually fit onto the regular beading thread or onto the wax linen cording because they have really tiny holes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do it with the beading thread. To start out with, I have 10 inches on either side, so 20 inches total of my cotton cording. And the cotton cording is a 2mm cotton cording. And I also have a pewter button. What I've done first is I've doubled over my cotton cording and I've tied just a regular overhand knot big enough to make sure that my button can go through. Next, what I've done is I've taken my thread and my needle and I've sewed it actually right below through the cording right below the knot. I'm going to leave about a 3-inch tail, and then I'm going to tie a knot. I'm going to tie a knot right here, and that's going to hold that thread on. You can also, if you want to, tie the thread in when you do that first initial knot. So I'm going to tie that right over left, and then I'm going to switch around and do left over right. Do a square knot and get that nice and tied tight. And the knot's just going to hang out there. I'm not going to burn down or do anything else with the thread. I'm going to take my thread again and my needle and sew through the cotton cording one more time so that it comes out the other side. And this is a size 10 English beading needle. I'm using that size because I still need to get through the pearls. And now that I'm ready to go, so I've sewed through twice and I've done a knot. What I'm doing here is I'm going to be doing figure eights. Normally you're just going to go through the bead once with the wax linen cording. With the thread and needle you're going to have to go through the bead twice. It's always a good idea when starting out to add some smaller beads at the start. You can kind of see it here on mine a little bit. I have some smaller beads there at the start. So that way it's starting in a V. I'm going to start and I put my seed bead on. My thread's coming over my cotton cording. I'm going to go under the cotton cording, sew back through the bead. What this is going to do is loop the cording around the cotton. So it's looping that thread right around the cotton. I'm going to then take this here and I'm taking my thread now around over the top. So I'm always coming over the top of my cotton cording. And I'm coming over the top, I'm going to grab that seed bead and I'm sewing down through the seed bead. And then that's in place. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring my needle and thread around the cotton cording. I haven't put on any beads, I'm just taking it around the cotton cording. So that way it loops around. I'm going to add 2 more of my seed beads. And then what I'm going to do is, so I'm coming out from underneath the cording. I'm going around the top, around the cotton cording, sewing down through the seed beads. That's my first time there. Down and through. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my cording and I'm going back through the bead and I'm circling around. So I'm always going around the top of the cording, coming out the bottom. Now you're going to see 2 threads coming here out at the top. Now I'm going to get into using my beads. Again, I'm tucking my needle underneath my thread to begin with. And it's really, you're taking your thread in a figure 8. I'm going underneath. I'm going to put on one of my pearls. And it is slower moving than using the wax linen cording, but you kind of don't really have other options when it comes to pearls. You can use the silk cording, the Griffin silk, but I still like the hold of this better. So I put my pearl on. My thread's coming out from underneath my cotton cording at the top. Always when I come out of a bead, I'm going over the thread and under the cotton. I take my thread and my needle back through the bead then. Sometimes it'll be a tight fit. Go over again and under and then back through my bead. And then when I come out the bottom here, you will be able to see those 2 threads at the bottom. So it's always going to alternate after that first bead. If it's really tight and you can't get the needle through, sometimes this happens with the pearls, grab a pliers, just kind of give it a nice little tug. That'll get it around. And then here at the bottom you see those 2 threads coming out. Again, my thread's going to go underneath my cotton cording. I'm going to put on my bead. The thread's going to go over and under. So it's always going over and under. I'm going to continue on with my bracelet so I can show you how to attach the clasp. So now at the end of my bracelet, I've continued on, and you can see this alternating stitch that is happening. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's constantly going to happen the whole way throughout your project as you're going back through the beads multiple times. I've downgraded here just like I started at the beginning, and you can see it on the back of my bracelet here too. I've downgraded from 2C beads to 1C bead, and depending on your project, I went from 6s on or 8s on that one to 11s on mine because it was a little bit thinner. And what I'm going to do is kind of finish like I started. I'm going to take my thread and my needle, and I'm going to sew them right back through my cotton cording. Pull the needle out. Take those loops out of there. I'm going to give it a nice tight tug. I'm going to tie a sewer's knot. So I'm making a loop. I'm going to take my needle through that loop, and that's going to knot the whole thing around my cording. What I'm going to do then lastly with this is sew back through again, but I'm still going to keep this on here after I'm done sewing back through. If you're using leather, you're basically going to skip the sew through step. You're going to knot it on there. Okay, so I'm going to keep that on. Now I'm going to take my button, and this is a button with a shank in the back, and I'm going to slide my button on, and my cording is a little too large, so what I'm going to do is, and I have another bracelet that I fit this button on with the same cording, and what I had to do was take my nippers and just kind of cut off some of that thread, some of that cording, to push that through. That button then is going to hang out right there at the end of my project, and this is one of our new pewter buttons. So I've taken it through one of my loops, and all I'm going to do is tie 2 knots in the back. And that's going to tie that right in place there. There's 1 and 2. I tie that really tight, and then what I'm going to do is kind of a precaution, and you can see a little bit here on this one, is I actually sewed through the knot with my thread and my needle. So I'm going to sew up through the knot and stop. And then all I'm going to do is cut off and glue some of my ends, and you have your nice leather wrap, cotton wrap bracelet that you can use with smaller holed beads.